Just a short watercolour demonstration of using warm and cool colours to create mood in a landscape. This is the photograph that I'm working from. It's from a video that I took in the Lake District when we were walking up near Coniston, the Old Man of Coniston. It's called Boulder Canyon. I've already done a drawing. I've used Sim Trace, which you'll find out more about when it's ready to release. Okay, I'm using quite a large brush to lay in the colour quickly. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use some yellow ochre, because I want the warmth in the sky. So I'm just going to slap that on, as you can see, very, very roughly. Make it lighter at the bottom. The way I do that is by blotting it off with the brush like that. Bring it down into, just with the clear water that is, into the landscape. Okay, now the important thing with this method of overlaying colours is to dry in between sections. So that's what I'm going to do now with the hairdryer. Sorry. Next step, I'm going to use a light wash of Alizarin Crimson to get some warmth again into the sky. So I'm going to turn it upside down, or sideways on in fact, and just quickly run along like that. Because the paint's dry underneath, we can touch it lightly without disturbing the paint that's dry underneath, if that makes sense. And I'm also going to add, unbelievably, a little blue. I say unbelievably because up to now I've been working on this sky without adding any blue to it. So just a few patches to indicate clouds and such like. There we go. Now this sort of method makes a more interesting sky than just using blue. Now we've got a bit more interest in there. Carry that down into the landscape. We'll work on that next. Just use the brush to lift out indications of a few lighter clouds. Great. And we'll dry that with the hairdryer. Okay, continuing now with a smaller brush, using Hooker's Green mixed with a little bit of the yellow ochre. Just going to indicate, this is just the first layer, remember, indicate some of the distant hill there, and some of the lighter grassy areas around these rocks. And this is just the first little touch of what we're going to do there, because mostly it's actually quite dark around there. And it's almost like there's layers, or rather sort of strips of different colour of grass and such like as it comes further towards the foreground, and it'll get warmer in colour, more towards the brown. Okay, that's that bit done. Now I can actually come straight in now with our mixture of burnt umber and ultramarine, which we've used before to create interesting tones. There's a tendency to make things too light, and I'm as guilty as anybody, but you can go over it again and darken things off. So we're just doing some of these rocks in the distance. Now you might think, in the distance it's going to be light. Well, not necessarily, because it's actually silhouetted against the sky. That's the effect I want to get. So just gradually, very quickly. Now I know that it's slightly running into some of the grassy area that we've placed there, but that will then move up the rocks and start to create the effect of greenery, the lichen and such like growing up the rocks, and we don't mind having that effect. It looks good. Now the drawing is important because you separate out, you might think, oh, something like that doesn't need drawing because it's just quite a simple shape, but you need to remember there's different rocks there, and so you leave areas and then you can go into them again and with other patches of colour. And also bearing in mind what I said about warm and cool, in this case the warm being towards brown, towards umber, and the cool being towards blue, so that you don't always notice it when you're first putting it down, but you notice it later sometimes because you suddenly realise that you've got that variety which your eyes like. Your eyes like to see the variety in colour. So I'm putting in some ultramarine blues here, just picking things out. It's going to have to go a bit darker, these rocks, but this is just a start. The light's actually catching those bits there, so we'll leave that light at the moment. And there's some bits there that are being caught by the light, but we'll go in with some darker colour in a minute. This rock here is quite strongly silhouetted, but might be too dominant at the moment. We'll have to maybe change that. Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to stop there and dry that now quickly. Quick look at the reference photo on my laptop, but you notice, I don't know if you can see it clearly, but some of the rocks there are really very, very dark against the sky, and then some of these, there's lighter bits in there, and there's obviously some of this grass is carried up there among these rocks. So we need to get that and get that variety into the picture. Okay, carrying on with our small brush. What number brush is this? It's a number 6. It's a Pro Lean Plus number 6 for those who like to know these things. Right, want to really pick out those silhouettes, as I was saying. So this part ends there. There's a grassy area. Another rock there. I'm going to work quite fast because I want to get the idea that it's craggy. I don't want to get too precious with any of these watercolours. I like the ones that, I mean, John Cotman's one of my favourite watercolour painters, and he actually is quite detailed, but when you look closely at his work, which I might try and do a video showing some of his work close up, you see that they're patches of colour that he uses, little patches. He was quite well known for that, one of my favourite artists. Okay. I'll stop there with the video because that gets boring and just carry on. Right, progressing it now. I've darkened off the rocks, so I've started using ochre to just put in some of the foliage here, some of the rough bracken and stuff, the colour of it anyway. And I'm going to add to that. I'm going to work really fast on this because, you know, you can get too fiddly, and I don't want a fiddly foreground because the focus is the background. I just want the pathway to be visible, so you can see that it's a path. But I'm not going to do too much. I'm actually going to leave quite a few gaps and stuff in here. Slap the water on. Realise I haven't done much else with the hills here, so I'm just going to bring in just a bit of ultramarine to bring in some pattern and texture there. Ultramarine blue. There we go. And again, I'm going to do a similar thing, a bit more blue in here. Some of these rocks. And I'm going to indicate some tufts of grass, some texture. And we can go back in with pencil in a little while as well if we want to. And this is going to be where the path is. It's not on the photograph as such. There was a path there, but you couldn't see it terribly clearly. But we're just going to use the blue to indicate something there. Okay, coming in now with this is Alizarin Crimson mixed with Hooker's Green, just to, because there's quite a lot of textures and little clumps of grass and such like all around there. So I'm going to bring those across like that. So you're creating stuff that the eye will notice. And it contrasts against the blues that we put in. And finally, I'm putting a blue cast, literally just a wash of blue over this side to create the effect of the shadow. And I shall go in a bit more with some pencil work, and that will be the end of the drawing, of the painting I should say. Quite straightforward, mixture of warm and cool colours. Make sure you're dry between applying layers. And just a final look, I've gone in with pencil work, enhanced the path and put in some little indications of grass, And not a bad little painting. I'll put a scan onto my blog as well, roytheartist.com.